Margaret Woodard talking about downtown and her hopes for the future. You can be sure to chime in and let us know what you think about downtown Augusta. We'll give you an opportunity to do that at the bottom of this broadcast. But first, as promised, we want to talk about lupus. And I said in many ways, lupus is a silent disease. Dr. Alyce Oliver is with Georgia Regents University, an expert in lupus, treats it on a daily basis. And wouldn't you agree with that, Dr. Oliver, that it is, you really don't see this thing coming, and it's difficult for many people to know they even have it?
That is right. Lupus can manifest itself in so many different ways. First of all, there's different types of lupus. I primarily see patients with systemic lupus in my clinic, but there are mainly skin forms of lupus. There's even a neonatal form of lupus. There are a variety of symptoms for lupus, so someone may go undiagnosed for many years because they may only have one or two symptoms, and the symptoms may accrue over time until it's recognized as lupus.
Is it very simplistically just the body turning on itself?
That is the easiest way to look at it. So the cells that fight infection for us, the immune system, turns against itself and attacks organs. And so any organ can be involved, and that's why there can be so many different symptoms for lupus.
Not a whole lot of people have lupus. It's not like cancer or diabetes, certainly things you may have heard of. Maybe 1.5 million people in the United States have lupus, 5 million worldwide. So all things considered, a handful of people. How can you tell you have it? My take on lupus before I knew that you were coming here was that it's someone who gets tired very easily. Would that be one of the primary symptoms if you find yourself without energy, to start kind of taking a closer look?
Right. Fatigue can be a main symptom in lupus and a variety of other autoimmune diseases. So it can start off very slowly as just feeling run down and tired. And then you can develop arthritis, skin rashes, and as I mentioned, there can be other organ involvement that you may not feel, such as kidney involvement.
Is there a diagnosis or a test for lupus, or do you eliminate everything else? How does it work?
Well, generally, for instance, you brought up the fatigue, so you may see your primary care physician, and so they're really on the front line of initially doing a physical exam and ordering some initial tests. There is an initial test called an anti-nuclear antibody that is linked with lupus. Everyone who has lupus is positive for this autoantibody, but it's not very specific. We see it in a variety of other autoimmune diseases, as well as 5 to 10% of the population. So it can be a tricky thing to have this positive test and to know if you have lupus at all, and that's when you bring the specialist in, a rheumatologist.
Who gets lupus as a rule?
Anyone can have it, children, women, men, older individuals, but primarily women of childbearing age. Women are 8 times more likely than men to have this disease.
Do we know why?
No. So women, there's been a lot of speculation about hormone involvement, estrogen involvement, but that really hasn't played out in terms of being able to prove the connection there. We do know there are genes involved. There is a genetic component. The best we can surmise right now is that it's that combination of genes in some sort of environmental insult or something you may come in contact with, but we really don't know. That's a primary focus of research now.
When you Google it, you see a lot of stress-related causes, or sunlight, or ultraviolet, or fluorescent light.
Right.
Is that something that we should be concerned about? I'm not saying we should all run from the sun or from fluorescent lighting, but is that something that should be on our radar screen when it comes to trying to avoid lupus?
Right, absolutely. Well, as any good dermatologist would say, we all need to be wearing our high SPF sunscreen,
That's right.
Irregardless of lupus. But absolutely, that can be a trigger for lupus, the different types of rashes and other organ involvement for lupus.
When is the point? I ask this every time we have a physician on this set, and what's the point where we should say, okay, I'm watching Brad and Alyce talk right now, I need to go to the doctor, but is there a point that, you know, if a symptom lasts a certain amount of time, or if you have several symptoms that you've already mentioned, how do you know when to go to the doctor and when to seek help versus just saying, oh, this is just a common thing, this happens to everybody?
Right. If the symptoms are lasting weeks to months, yes, you need to see your primary care physician, have to be evaluated, and then to be referred to a rheumatologist.
what happens once that diagnosis comes down? What kind of treatments are out there, and how do those treatments impact one's life?
In general, there is no one medication for lupus, so that's why it makes it somewhat tricky, and you may not hear a lot about treatments of lupus. Steroids are kind of the mainstay to get the initial disease, to get the flare under control. But then we use a variety of what we call steroid-sparing medications, so long-term medications to keep the condition under control, keep it quiet and in remission. And that really, the medicine that's chosen is really based on which organ is involved.
Please tell us about this flare and how often for a lupus patient it might happen.
It's very variable how often someone will flare. From my perspective as a physician, we don't want you to flare, and our goal of treating aggressively is to keep you in remission. It goes back to what you were referring to earlier. There can be different triggers for flares. We don't have a complete list of that as yet, but definitely stress and UV light are on that list.
Can it be transmitted?
No, that's a great question. It is not a communicable illness. As I mentioned, there is a genetic component to it, so you may see lupus run in families, but it's not going to run generation to generation typically.
What about the impact of lupus when it comes to one's ability to hold down a job or do any day-to-day activities that you might be used to, sports, etc.? Might it limit you in those areas?
The goal of treatment is to get people back to a normal life so they can have families, careers, play sports. We definitely encourage regular exercise.
How long have you been treating patients with lupus, if you don't mind me asking?
I've been at GRU for 6 years now.
And have you seen, it just seems like things are flying by when we talk about anything that has to do with medicine. Have you seen advances made even in that short time with how we address this?
Yeah, absolutely. We finally got our second FDA approved drug for lupus in the last couple of years, belimumab. So we do have new drugs that are available and new drugs in the pipeline.
And how often do patients have to take these drugs if they have lupus?
It's very variable. Again, there's so many different medications. Typically, the oral medications are daily.
Daily, yeah. A lot of my questions, and I'll tell you this is anytime I'm talking to a physician, come from a patient's point of view, and it comes from the goal. My goal is to make people not fearful. So I guess I should just ask you straight out, is there anything to be scared of? If someone is sitting at home, they have had something that's lasted for weeks or months. They are hearing every word you're saying and saying, oh my goodness, that's me. Should fear set in and be a part of this?
No, the best thing to do is to educate yourself and get the information that you need. First of all, we need a diagnosis. And the real issue is this is not a hopeless disease. We do have treatment options. Our goal is to put you into clinical remission with the use of our medications and get you back to your career, your family.
And my last question is one that we also get a lot from viewers. How much is it going to cost me? Is insurance pretty good about covering lupus-related treatments?
Yes, yes. And if we have had good experience as well as getting medications from pharmaceutical companies as well if it is cost prohibitive.
Well, listen, I appreciate everything that you're doing in the lupus arena, if you will, helping those people as they deal with it each day. And I'm grateful that you shared everything with us today. I've learned a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Alyce Oliver with Georgia Regents University. If you want to find out more about lupus, we will tell you how to get in touch with the Means Report, and then we can hook you up with Dr. Oliver and her team at Georgia Regents. A wealth of expertise over there for sure. When the Means Report continues, our question of the week, as well as information on how you can get in touch with us, watch previous episodes, and help shape future editions of this broadcast. We'll be right back.